Hello and welcome to another Drive-In Double Feature podcast. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything at all, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/Drive-In Double Feature podcast. Nathan, I was at my local yard sale the other day and
Yeah. Mhm.
and I saw all the cool stuff, like vintage stuff I saw, and I saw somebody with one of our old vintage merchandise that we had with one of our old drive-in double feature shirts that they were selling, and
Yeah.
and they're just like, I'm selling this shirt. It's one of my favorite podcasts called Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. They have a Patreon over there at drive-in.com/Drive-In Double Feature Podcast where they have some fun fights, have some discussions, play some fun games, take some fun quizzes. And you know what? It's only $5 a month. And they said, you know what? As I'm saying this right now, I'm not selling this shirt anymore. I'm keeping it because I'm
Wow. Well, was it one with the Scooby-Doo character art of us? Because that one's worth a lot.
yeah, it was.
Wow. Well, I've got a vintage Trashy Boys shirt, so I've got
Yeah,
it better.
yeah, I do. We got our own little private stash, but if I'm like, oh, if only they knew who they were talking to.
Mhm. Now they
So
know.
now they know. That was me. But
Mhm.
anyway, check that out. It's only $5 a month. Doesn't affect any regular content. But today we are talking about 1970s Getting Straight, and that is directed by Richard Rush, and it's starring Elliott Gould. This
Yes.
movie was labeled a romance movie when I picked it.
Yeah.
It's really not,
Yeah,
but
isn't it know what sucks about like genres? This happens so often where especially horror and romance. Especially because romance, I feel like, oh, there's a romance in it. There's like a couple, so it's romance, right?
that's the thing. It's just like there happens to be a couple in this movie, and they're there, and it's like, oh yeah, well, that's romance, which is not really the primary focus of this movie. I mean, the primary focus of this movie is that Elliot Gould is a former Vietnam veteran. He's
Hmm.
in college, and he's basically trying to get a teaching degree so that way he can become a teacher.
Yeah.
And
You just want a normal job.
yeah, he's just wanting a normal job. And you kind of get the impression that at one point he was kind of like this big radical, and he was participating in a lot of different protests and stuff. But just as he's gotten older, he's just kind of gotten disillusioned with the whole thing. And it's just like, it's not really worth fighting for type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's what it feels like. It's become like jaded, like going to the Vietnam War, and maybe it's almost like I can't control things. There's nothing I can do. So I just want to get a job and become part of the system and maybe help kids out in the future. Yeah, so you got that interesting backstory behind it, which already has a lot going for it. It's more than I expected. I knew nothing about this movie going in.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I didn't know either. So I mean, it was very much like I was trying to, I literally was like, okay, Elliot Gould, the romance movie, perfect. And
But it's funny, he happens to date Candice Bergen in this movie. And I mean, their relationship is a part of the movie. It does take up some scenes. I thought it was really funny both of these people are in the movie because me and my fiance were both going through SNL. We went through season one, we're on season two now, like halfway through. And both Candice Bergen and Elliot Gould have hosted that show multiple times. So it's like going back to an old buddy.
well, it was, yeah, it's like back then, it's just like, oh yeah, like you can have just like a celebrity hosting like two or three times a season, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. I think Buck Henry has hosted like 4 or 5 times, and I think he's going to host even more. So, but yeah, I mean, Elliot Gould, the '70s was his decade, man. He just was in so many movies, as we've
Oh,
come to know.
oh yeah, and I mean, like the other thing was too is I was trying to find a movie that was streaming of his,
Yeah.
and I was trying. There was this other one I really wanted to watch where it was like he has an affair, but I couldn't find it anywhere really. And but it was funny. So I found the trailer to that movie, and you know how they credit him in the trailer?
How?
Like they're like starring Elliot Mash Gould.
Elliott Mash. Wow. Yeah. The Mash School.
And I like, how insulting is that? Like, we're just
Right.
like, can you imagine? It's just like,
Tom Forrest Hanks.
or like this new movie with the Daniel Craig called Queer or whatever that's out right now, or like coming out, and it's just like starring Daniel James Bond Craig.
Yeah. Oh, he'd be so pissed.
Yeah.
That's awful. But I mean, like that elevated Gould, and let me tell you, Gould can't get enough of the guy. I think he's great here. Here's the thing though. Elliott Gould does have an archetype. He does play a lot of himself, kind of a sarcastic guy. But I don't know. He's usually pretty likable in all of these movies, and I'd say even here, where he's kind of angry against the system and just wants to do on his own, he continues to be pretty funny.
I mean, I struggled with liking him as a character in this
Really?
one
Yeah,
because he's pretty whiny, I think.
it's true. It's
And,
true.
and he takes out a lot of his anger on his girlfriend, Candice Bergen, who did not do anything to deserve
Yeah,
half of that.
because he is kind of like a douchebag. Because he's broke. He has a crappy car, and he gets kicked out of his home. And then he just shows up to Candice Bergen's. I should get her name, Jan's place, and is like, "Here, clean my laundry. I'm going back to
Yeah,
school."
yeah, and he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have sex, and then you're gonna do my laundry, and that's just how it works. And
And of course, she's not having it.
no, well, I mean, like, because they still go on dates, like that didn't break them up there.
Mhm.
So like they still go to like the I think he's like like another teacher or like another or like one of the head people there at the university, and they go and have dinner at his
Mhm.
house, and they have like a really nice time, and then Jan's just kind of like, oh, like I think I would really like something like that, just we can have like a nice home and with kids and
Mhm.
all that. And then he's just like, what, you spend one evening with all these people, and like now you want to just like
Yeah.
forget all your ideals and just move in, like.
And this is a fight in the middle of a party where everybody can hear it, which is brutal. Um yeah, and I mean that's what's interesting about the character. So like he says he's against all the ideal, or he's for all the ideal stuff now and screw all the activism, but it leaks out every once in a while how much he actually does hate the system.
Well, yeah, so like it's because they do reveal, like, because they do reveal little tidbits about him, because he does go and stay at his girlfriend's, but then she's just like, I'm leaving, like I don't want to fight with you, I'm gonna go stay somewhere else. So he basically goes and stays at like this other dude's apartment,
Hmm.
and there's a bunch of other college students like there too, and they're kind of like, it's like, well, what do we need to do to protest? And it's really like mundane, like stuff that just doesn't even matter. It's like, I think we need co-ed dorm rooms, and
Exactly.
it's like
Yeah.
clearly this guy just wants to get laid. And they are kind of like, well, we need a fight like they did at Selma. And Elliot Gould's like, it's like, "Dude, this is nothing like Selma. Like they were fighting for something like
Yeah,
worthwhile."
and he said he was at Selma.
Yeah,
That's like the
so
big singer there.
yeah, so
Which
that's the thing. Like, and they're like, you don't think what we do is important? And he's like, no, it's important, but you know,
exactly, it's like not that big a deal because he's like in the party, he's just trying to study. That's like him the whole movie. He's just trying to study, and they keep asking him because they want marijuana to become legal. Funny. And then and then they're like, we only need 2,000 signatures, and he's like, oh no, it's 5,000 or just something like that.
50,000.
Fifty
Because
thousand,
because
yeah.
you need at least, you need a, what was it, like 10% of like the voting major 10% of the voting population or something.
Yeah, yeah. So, so like he knows all of his stuff, but he just wants to study. I think the beginning of this movie is really interesting and kind of sets something up because this movie in the beginning is him on a busy, busy college campus kind of running around trying to finish tests, turn in stuff, and like people are stopping him along the way. And I think it would have been an interesting movie if it all took place like at a college in one day, especially a college this busy, because like there's always people moving. I liked how it looked. I liked that he was running against like giant crowds of people at this college.
Yeah, there's a lot of plot threads in here where I'm just like I didn't think was really kind of needed, but
Hmm.
it's very much like because there's another character that's like this really big hippie type of character that's trying to get out of going into the military and like getting drafted to Viet because that's the other thing too. It's like right in the middle of the Vietnam War when people are getting drafted just like out of
Hmm.
nowhere. So, you know, they're basically like trying to think of like reasons not to go to Vietnam. And like that one hippie guy is just like at first he pretends to like be gay and then like and
Yeah.
because he shows up, he's like, "Oh, hello, officer," like that type of thing,
And
and
he's
just
like, get over there with the other gay guys.
yeah, just because it's like he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I know you're faking it or whatever." So and or like he joins a different religion. It's like, "Oh no, I'm a Buddhist now."
Yeah, there's like that one scene where he chases like a lady on the streets, like I need to marry you so I can stay in the country, and like a whole bunch of men chase after him because he's chasing after this lady.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
um,
and that kind of leads into like another thing where he like ends up cheating and but he blames it on Elliott Gould and Elliott Gould's the one that gets in trouble for it.
yeah, yeah. Um, which is because like this guy, he's kind of dumb. I don't know. I liked the character, but I didn't really get him at
That's
all.
I didn't either. I'm just like the only reason why he was there, it seemed like it's just so like Elliot Gould would get kicked out of the education department because he's part of this department, and it's the head of that department is like one of his professors, and who's like
Mhm,
really stuffy old guy, just like I don't like your newfangled ways, and you're such
mhm,
a young hot shot, you don't play by the rules type of thing, and
mhm,
so he's basically looking for a reason to get rid of him, and he so in Elliot Gould, we didn't mention like, he does end up teaching his own classroom. And it's basically like remedial English where it's like people don't know
mhm,
anything about English. And because then I thought it was going to be something like, oh, like it's going to be something like, lean on me or whatever, where it's like, or like, oh, like stand and deliver. It's like, oh, let me just take these troubled kids and I'm going to show them like learning is
mhm.
fun.
But once again, like a lot of other things in this movie, a minor plot, a very minor extra plot to this movie, him teaching these kids. But it did have one of my favorite movie parts of the movie where like the kids, where the kids like reading Batman. And then he's like, oh, no, no, no. Don't make fun of him for reading Batman for the book report. It's just like Don Quixote. This stuff is great. Like, of course, he's over here like, yeah, Batman's like one of the best. As good as Don Quixote. I mean, I love Batman. Don't get me wrong.
I, I mean, I didn't see what he said as a lie.
Okay, yeah, okay,
But
cool.
but he does like the whole like the trope you see where it's like, no, I'm actually like a young hip teacher, like a
Yeah, because he says like shove it. Like, how do you conjugate the word for
shafted.
shafted? That's right. Because the song says shafted. This movie has like a song.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, like I was shafted, you were shafted, he was shafted. It's like
Mhm,
so that he does like that whole thing in there. And like the big payoff to like that whole plot is like he gets kicked out of the program and the stuffy professor is basically like, you're out, like no more class for you, we're going to reassign a new teacher.
mhm,
And Jan, was like helping him like grade papers and all that. And it sounds like at some points like they were kind of like guessing on the grades because there's like he's like, no, there needs to be a couple of D's and F's in here. It's like they're not gonna
yes.
believe it. But anyway, like at the very end, like the big payoff to that, it's just like that the one guy reading Batman is like, he wrote you a letter. He said he makes me want to read. He makes me so happy be to
So,
be learning English.
so it's kind of like stand and deliver and lean on me, right?
Kinda, but it's like okay, like let's just pretend like the kids are not in the movie type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They're out of the movie. No, it's interesting because there's a lot of that. Like Harrison Ford is in this movie in an extremely early role. Like this is before American Graffiti, which is like crazy to me.
I
Um,
saw that and I was like, is that Harrison Ford? Like I kept, and I was like,
yeah,
I think that is.
yeah, and he kind of plays like a dummy. He's like the next door neighbor to Candice Bergen, and he's with somebody, but he knows like a gynecologist who Elliott Gould thinks Candice Bergen sleeps with. Um, which yeah, there's a big fight there in the middle of the movie. If Candice Bergen shows up in the movie, there's a fight. That's just that's the movie.
Well, that's what I was like. I was like, I never really felt like the chemistry between these two, like where it's like they're like actually in love because it's like every time I see them on screen, they're just always fighting.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. That it only works at the end of the movie. There's like the big romantic payoff at the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, like they never really like have that like real tender moment. It's always just like a fight breaks out and things start to boil over at the campus because
Mhm.
the students are still protesting. And did they say specifically like what they're like what they're trying to go for? Like,
No, they're just protesting. Like there's nothing really that's something interesting, I guess. It's never concrete, but just everybody wants to riot. Like everyone, well, not really riot, but they want to protest.
yeah, and he kind of like Elliot Gould kind of shows up like to talk to the dean like on their behalf,
Hmm.
and the dean's like, "We're not turning over the school to those students," and he's like, "Well, no, they just want to know they can be a part of something." I'm like, I don't even know what their goal is. Like, you need to be a lot more clear with
Yeah,
like what they actually want to happen.
yeah, it's like they didn't want to they didn't want to base it off of one thing because Elliot Gould it's very vague. I think he's like it's just what the kids want. Just just give them a little bit. But it's never specifically like this is exactly what the kids want. For all I know that they actually want to own the school and then the dean actually has the right to be like no. You can't have this
Yeah.
school.
So I really wasn't clear on that, but
Mhm.
that's that I guess again that's not really the main point. It's just like it does kind of boil over at one point where a big riot breaks out and Elliot Gould like kind of goes out looking for Jan and he never runs into her and she ends up like getting almost trampled to death.
Yeah, it's crazy. She's like on the ground like bleeding.
Yeah. So they don't ever see each other and then she like comes over to his apartment. She's like sobbing. She's got blood on her face. And then Elliot goes like, "Oh, you poor thing." And he just starts like kissing her and then just starts having sex with her. And I'm just like,
Uh-huh.
it's like, really? You couldn't like
but then like he has that whole thing and was like, "Oh, you came back, you were horny." All kids protest for is to have sex. You're out there kicking and you came home, wanted to sleep with me, which is such a like a dick way to put it because she's like, "No, that's not it. That's not why these kids are doing this."
yeah, it's very much like he's trying to rationalize like this whole thing and like it's like, oh, like you guys don't actually care about any of these issues. You're just in it for yourself.
Yeah, because that's not the only riot in the movie because it happens again at the end of the movie, but an even bigger one.
Yeah.
Um, but this is during because I guess Elliot Gould had an oral exam that he's got to do where he's got to talk. Oh,
It's
God.
for his masters.
Yeah, for his master's, so he can get his master's. And he talks with the people that will give it to him, and he has to talk literature. And he says his favorite book is The Great Gatsby. And like the one main dude's like, yeah, F. Scott Fitzgerald was gay. He was writing like he was gay, and Elliot Gould's just
And,
like, it's almost like he can't admit that that's like even true. Like he
well, he
doesn't
said,
see it.
yeah, well, because he says like the two characters and like the two male characters in Great Gatsby, it's like, well, it's they were written like they were gay. And he's just like, what?
Huh?
It's just like, and, and it's like, well, like, and I think like that's supposed to be like the comedic moment where it's just like some people read too much into some stuff and it like ends up making stuff gay, maybe.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
That's what I thought they were going for.
No. I definitely think it's like they looked way too deep into it, and maybe it's a little more surface level than that. And Elliott Gould couldn't succumb to their how one-sided their visions of art is, right? Because like it's like he was like they're gay, right? Like waiting for him to just confirm,
He's staring him down like, you better tell me that you think these guys are gay.
or
Like,
otherwise you're not getting a master.
and he's like, at first he's like, could could be a possibility. No, no, no.
Yeah, no, they're gay. But but he freaks out. He like Elliot Gould flips out and just starts yelling at them and everything. And then that's when the riot breaks out. And then that's when Elliot Gould's like, no, no, this is my master's meeting. No, pay attention to me. Because they all get up to look. And it's like, you've already ruined your master's degree, buddy.
Yeah, I was like, there's no hope at this point.
Uh-huh. So yeah, then there's a huge riot and they start busting up windows and destroying the college campus, which I guess was a common thing at the movies at this time because you have movies like Medium Cool and stuff like that where that's like a plot
Yeah.
device.
Yeah, and I mean, like the whole lead up to this was just that him and Jan had broken up,
Hmm.
and she was like, "I'm gonna marry Bill," and which it was just the GYN, I think, right?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And she's like, "I'm gonna marry him, and I'm gonna say yes," and he's just like, "Fine, do it." And then at the end, he's like, he runs into her, and he's like, "Hey, I failed my master." She's like, "Oh, I said no to Bill," and he's like, "Oh, great," and just
Yeah, and they're
and
both
they just
smiling.
yeah, and they just end up back together.
Yep, and then they make love in the middle of the riot. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, like I think it was trying to go for like a really comedic towards the end.
Yeah, because the riot does end up being a little silly, right? Like it has like a silly vibe, like throwing papers and
Well,
stuff.
I mean, just the meeting alone scene was just
Yeah.
like
Oh
so
yeah.
over the top.
Because he does hold that guy who is calling F. Scott Fitzgerald gay. He holds him and dumps a, a jug of water over his face. And he's like, no, don't do that, please.
And he
It's really
kisses him
goofy.
too.
That's right. He kisses him on the lips. Yeah.
So it's very, I guess like the tone of it, I was really kind of like confused on like what they were going for.
Hmm.
Um, so overall, I do think it drags a
Hmm.
little bit because it's very very slow in some parts.
Hmm.
But I mean, like even though I said I don't like the character that Elliot Gould's playing, he plays it really well.
Yeah, yeah. It's an unlikable character played by a good actor.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
and Candice Bergen, she's really good in it too. And I do I do like the dynamic between, I guess I would have liked to have seen more dynamic between the two of those characters, more
Hmm.
so than Elliot Gould, just like him and his like educational woes. Because it felt like a lot of those threads were missing, or like they're just like, I was like, there's a lot going on with this one. More than I thought there would be.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely uses like its 2 hour runtime. Like it's like full of things, but it also is slow too, right? It slowly works your way through them. Um, for me, I don't know what it was. This movie really worked for me.
Hmm.
I was really enjoying it. Like the whole time I was just really into it. It's slow, it drags, but I kind of like that about that. It has like a meandering plot. Elliot Gould just kind of bumbling around, goes from one place to another. There's so many things going on. It makes this movie feel huge, even though it shouldn't have been a huge movie. It's kind of like a movie about a couple fighting and then a campus riots, but we really get to look at Elliot Gould, see his character grow. Well, not really grow, but you get to see his character, how it works, and where he's at the end of the movie. And I don't know. I thought it had good performances. Thought it was really interesting. I thought it was a neat little piece of history.
Yeah, like I
Hmm.
said, it's a decent movie. It's just it didn't wow me, I guess, as much as you did, but
Hmm.
um, I would give it I'd give it a light recommend for me
Hmm.
personally. It's a decent little movie, I thought. Nothing amazing, so but it's good enough to check out.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I really enjoyed it.
Well, good. I'm glad you liked it a lot.
Hmm.
But Nathan, What are we going to be talking about next time?
All right, Ryan. Well, I am going to be talking about Vice Squad from 1982.
Oh, cop movie. You never done that
I
before.
don't like cop movies, but I thought I would change it up a little.
Okay, well, I figure, we got to close out Romance Week. So
Mhm.
we're going to be talking about 1980s Gregory's Girl.
Oh man, yeah, that one.
Yeah, the classic one.
Uh-huh.
And that one is streaming on Tubi right now.
Awesome. And I should say mine is streaming on Tubi as well.
Perfect. Can't wait. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. And if you have any thoughts and opinions about this podcast, please don't forget to email us at driveandoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/driveandoublefeaturepodcast. But until next time.
Until next time.